Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a literal journey right through the center of the human digestive system. I want you to think of your body as this epic 9-meter industrial factory line. But instead of assembling parts into a finished product, this biological factory works entirely in reverse. It's designed to systematically break complex things down into their most basic microscopic building blocks. If you're looking to clearly understand exactly how we process everything we consume, well, you're in the exact right place.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We'll start with 1, the journey begins. Then move downward into 2, the acidic churn. Explore 3, the chemical breakdown. Cover 4, reabsorption and waste. And finally, lock in 5 key processes.
Section 1. The journey begins from the mouth to the esophagus.
So, at the very heart of this explainer is the concept of the alimentary canal. Basically, it's one continuous tube running directly through your entire body. Various specialized organs work closely together within this tube to break down food into small, soluble molecules that your bloodstream can actually use. It's pretty wild to think about, but anatomically speaking, we're essentially constructed right around this single continuous pipeline.
Our journey kicks off right in the mouth with 3 essential rapid-fire steps. First up, we've got mastication, which is just the scientific term for chewing. This physical crushing breaks down food to massively increase its surface area. Second, salivary amylase enters the mix. This is an enzyme secreted by your salivary glands that instantly starts digesting starch into simple sugars. You know, if you've ever chewed a piece of bread and noticed it quickly starts to taste a little sweet, amylase is exactly why. Finally, your hardworking tongue forms all of this chewed, sweet material into a soft, manageable mass called a bolus, prepping it perfectly for a safe swallow.
Now you might be wondering, how exactly do we swallow this bolus safely without choking? Well, it comes down to 2 contrasting structures. On one side, we have the epiglottis, which acts as a crucial defensive flap that closes right over your windpipe so food doesn't accidentally enter your lungs. On the other side, we have the esophagus, a guiding muscular tube that's ready to accept the food and transport it down into the stomach. It's just an incredibly elegant, split-second gatekeeping system.
To actually move that food down the esophagus, your body uses a process called peristalsis. Now, this is a vital keyword you're going to want to remember. Peristalsis is a rhythmic wave of contractions happening right in the muscular walls of the esophagus. Think of it exactly like squeezing a tube of toothpaste from the bottom up to force the paste out. These powerful contractions occur just above the bolus, aggressively squeezing and forcing it downward through the tube. Sure, gravity helps, but it's this active mechanical squeezing action that really does the heavy lifting.
Section 2. The acidic churn, liquefying food in the stomach.
Your stomach isn't just some passive holding tank. It is an absolute powerhouse with a dual purpose. Its internal lining secretes gastric juice loaded with proteases, enzymes that are specifically designed to chemically digest proteins. But it also releases hydrochloric acid. This potent acid is absolutely crucial because it maintains the exact optimum pH needed for those enzymes to do their job, while simultaneously acting as a defensive shield, killing off harmful organisms like bacteria that might have hitched a ride on your food. And while all this chemistry is happening, the stomach's thick muscular walls are actively contracting, squeezing, and churning the food to physically liquefy it.
Section 3. The chemical breakdown, the duodenum and the ileum.
Okay, so we're exiting the stomach and entering the small intestine. But we immediately hit a biological snag. The liquid leaving the stomach is dangerously acidic. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the pancreas perfectly steps in to solve this acid problem while deploying a full chemical arsenal. It secretes sodium hydrogen carbonate directly into the duodenum to completely neutralize that burning stomach acid. At the exact same time, it releases a cocktail of enzymes, amylases for carbohydrates, proteases for proteins, and lipases for fats. It's a precisely timed chemical bombardment that targets all 3 major macronutrients right as they enter the intestine.
But wait, we can't forget about dietary fats. They're notoriously stubborn and just don't mix well with watery enzymes. This is where a process called emulsification comes into play. Bile, which is made in your liver and stored in your gallbladder, gets released into the small intestine. Now note this distinction carefully. Bile doesn't chemically digest fat. Instead, it physically tears it apart into much smaller droplets. Think of it like squirting dish soap onto a really greasy frying pan to instantly disperse the oil. This physical breakdown massively increases the surface area, meaning those pancreatic lipases we just talked about can finally step in and digest the fat molecules efficiently.
Moving smoothly from the duodenum, we travel deeper into the second part of the small intestine, the ileum. We're zooming right into the microscopic level now. Down here, specialized enzymes located directly within the epithelial lining take those remaining short-chain molecules and systematically break them down into simple reducing sugars and single amino acids. At this specific stage, the molecules have finally been chopped up enough that they're tiny, soluble, and ready for their next big move.
So how do we actually get those tiny molecules out of the tube and into the blood? Well, the ileum relies on some truly incredible anatomical design. First, it's extremely long, which provides plenty of transit time. But more importantly, its internal lining is heavily folded into millions of tiny, finger-like projections called villi. Picture this internal lining not like a flat hardwood floor, but rather like a really thick, plush shag carpet. This brilliant structural design massively increases the internal surface area, ensuring the absolute maximum amount of nutrient absorption can happen as the liquefied food washes over them. Every single inch is built for ultimate biological efficiency.
Section 4. Reabsorption and waste, the colon and the rectum. By this point in our journey, virtually all the usable nutrients have been extracted, and our body shifts completely into its final cleanup and recovery mode. What enters the large intestine, specifically the colon, is mostly undigested matter and fluids. Here, the body acts as a highly efficient recycling center. The colon aggressively reabsorbs vital water back into the body so we don't become severely dehydrated after a meal. It also gathers up those useful bile salts we deployed earlier and transports them right back to the liver to be reused later. It's a closed-loop system. Absolutely nothing of value is recklessly discarded.
Once all possible nutrients, excess water, and bile salts have been successfully extracted, what we're finally left with is feces. This is a semi-solid mass consisting entirely of waste, undigested dietary fiber that our bodies just can't break down, protective mucus, and millions of dead cells that naturally shed from the inner lining of the alimentary canal itself.
And that means the physical transit is now nearly over. This resulting semi-solid mass of waste is pushed along and stored in the second part of the large intestine, known as the rectum. It sits there safely in temporary storage before finally passing out of the body entirely via the anus. And with that, the epic, highly mechanical journey of our food's transit is totally complete.
Section 5. 5 key processes. Mastering the biological vocabulary.
All right, now that we've seen all the mechanical steps, let's do a rapid-fire recap to firmly lock in the 5 essential terms we just witnessed in action. Term number 1 is ingestion. This is exactly what it sounds like, the literal taking in of substances, meaning your food and drink, into the body, specifically through the mouth. It's the very first physical action that kicks off the entire sequence.
Term number 2 is digestion. Now, the crucial distinction to remember here is that digestion operates on 2 distinct fronts. It happens physically, changing the size of the food without altering the molecules themselves, like chewing in the mouth, churning in the stomach, and bile emulsification. But it also happens chemically, where enzymes actively dismantle large, insoluble molecules into completely new, small, soluble ones. Moving on to term number 3, absorption. Think of this as the great biological crossover point. It's the literal movement of those small, newly soluble nutrients right out of the internal pipeline of the intestines and directly into your bloodstream. And as we saw, because of those incredible structural villi, this almost entirely takes place in the ileum. Term number 4 is assimilation. Now, whatever you do, don't confuse this with absorption. Assimilation is the ultimate goal of this entire complex system. It's the movement of those digested food molecules directly from the blood into the body's individual cells where they're actually put to work. This means your cells using newly arrived amino acids to build fresh proteins, or your liver taking excess glucose and converting it into glycogen to store for future energy.
And finally, term number 5 is egestion. This is our ultimate cleanup stage, strictly defined as the passing out of any food that hasn't been digested or absorbed, existing as feces passing through the anus. This singular process completely closes out the ongoing biological cycle of the alimentary canal. So we've just traveled the full 9-meter reverse factory line that is operating silently inside of you every single day. Which leaves me with one final question for you. How are you going to view your very next meal, now that you know about the invisible, epic, industrial breakdown that immediately kicks into high gear inside your body? Every single bite you take initiates this highly coordinated, microscopic symphony of physical crushing, acid bathing, and chemical dismantling. Definitely keep that extraordinary process in mind the next time you sit down to eat.
Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep feeding your curiosity.